For 11 years, my husband's family made me sleep in the garage. Not because there wasn't space. The house had 6 bedrooms. 3 of them sat empty most nights. Not because I'd done something wrong. I'd never even raised my voice in that house. They made me sleep in the garage because I was, in his mother's exact words, not the kind of woman a Whitfield should have brought home. I slept on a cot next to a freezer that ran loud all night through 11 Massachusetts winters with a space heater I had to unplug before bed because the wiring couldn't handle it. My name is Diane. I'm 48 years old. 3 weeks ago, my husband died, and at his funeral, I opened a folder I'd been keeping in a safety deposit box since 2014. What was inside that folder ended his family, quietly, without a single word raised. Let me tell you exactly how. I met Robert Whitfield in 2013. I was 35, divorced, working as a paralegal at a firm in Boston. He was 42, never married, the youngest son of one of those old New England families that still pretended their money came from shipping. It came from slaves 2 centuries ago. They never said that part out loud, but every guest house who knew the family knew. Robert wasn't like them. That's why I married him. He was the family disappointment. He'd refused to go into the family business, he taught high school history, he drove a used Subaru. He'd been quietly cut off from the family money at 26, and he'd never asked for a dollar back. His mother, Eleanor Whitfield, had not spoken to him in 9 years when we met. That changed the day she heard he was getting married. She called him on a Tuesday afternoon. She told him the family was willing to forgive and willing to welcome his bride. She told him there was a guest house on the family estate where we could live rent-free. Robert was crying when he hung up the phone. He told me his mother had finally chosen love over pride. I knew, even then, that wasn't what was happening. But he was so happy, so I said yes. The guest house was the garage. I want to be specific because people don't believe me when I say this without specifics. It was a converted 3-car garage attached to the main house by a covered walkway. There was a small kitchenette, there was a half bath with a stand-up shower, there was a single room with a queen bed, a dresser, and 1 window that looked out at a brick wall. When we arrived with our 2 suitcases, Eleanor met us in the driveway. She handed Robert a key. She did not hand me a key. She walked us across the courtyard, past the front door of the main house, around to the side, and unlocked the garage door for us herself. Robert said, "Mom, where are we sleeping?" Eleanor smiled. "Right here, dear, until you get on your feet." Robert was 43 years old. He owned a car, he had a steady job, he did not need to get on his feet. But he was so grateful to have his mother back that he didn't argue. I didn't argue either. I told myself it was temporary. It lasted 11 years. The rules of being a Whitfield by marriage were unwritten but absolute. I was not allowed in the main house unless invited. I was not allowed at family dinners unless someone specifically requested my presence, which happened 4 times in 11 years, all at Christmas, all under duress. I was not allowed in family photos, not the ones at the holidays, not the ones at his sister's wedding, not the one at his nephew's christening, where I was there, in the church, in a navy dress I'd bought specifically for the occasion, and the photographer was instructed by Eleanor to take the family portrait after Diane steps out for a moment. I was not introduced to family friends. When they came over for parties at the main house, I was politely asked to stay in the garage. I was not invited to the family lake house in Maine. Robert was. He went without me twice in the first year before he stopped going. After that, it was easier for everyone if Robert and I just kept to ourselves. We had our little garage life, our books, our bad TV, our coffee mornings on the small concrete patio outside our 1 window. We had each other. Robert would say sometimes, lying next to me at night, "Diane, I'm so sorry. We'll get our own place soon." We never did. Because Robert's salary as a high school teacher, even in Massachusetts, did not buy you a house in his family's neighborhood, and Robert refused, on principle, to ever ask for money from his mother. That was the principle that ruled our entire marriage. That was the principle his family knew about. That was the principle they used to keep us in the garage. Year 3, Eleanor stopped pretending. She stopped calling me Diane. She started calling me the woman. "Robert, is the woman coming to brunch?" "Robert, please ask the woman to move her car. It's blocking the gate." "Robert, the woman left the garage door open last night and a raccoon got in. Tell her to be more careful." Robert would correct her gently every single time. "Mom, her name is Diane." She would smile and nod and say, "Of course, dear," and she would do it again the next week. His sister, Margaret, called me the help at a Christmas party in 2017. I was standing 5 feet away from her, holding a glass of wine. She was telling a guest, "Oh, that one's the help. She's only here because Robert is." The guest looked at me, embarrassed. I smiled at her. I walked back to the garage. I did not tell Robert. I did not tell him any of it. I want to be honest about that because it matters for what comes next. I never gave Robert the chance to defend me because I knew if I did, he would have left them. He would have lost his family forever. And he had spent 9 years estranged from them already. He could not survive losing them again. So I carried it. For 11 years, I carried it. I carried Eleanor's contempt and Margaret's contempt and James's open laughter at my thrift store sweater at one Christmas dinner. I carried being told to use the side door. I carried not being allowed to attend Robert's father's funeral in 2019. It's a family-only service, Diane. You understand. I carried it because I loved my husband and because I knew in 2014 what they didn't. I knew from the very beginning what was actually in my safety deposit box. Here's what Robert's family did not know. When Robert's father, old Mr. Whitfield, the patriarch, the man who had cut Robert off at 26, died in 2019, his will was read at the family lawyer's office in Boston. I was not invited, but I knew what it said, because in 2014, 6 months before our wedding, Robert's father had quietly contacted me through his personal lawyer, not the family one, and asked me to meet alone. I was 28 days from marrying his son. I drove to a coffee shop in Cambridge. He was already there, sitting in a back booth in a gray cardigan that didn't match his usual style. He looked tired. He told me he knew his wife. He told me he had watched her run his son's first fiancé out of the family in 1998 and his daughter's first boyfriend out of the family in 2002, and a kindly aunt who had married into the family in 1987 out of the family by 1991. He told me he loved his son and that his son loved me and that he had decided, without telling Eleanor, without telling anyone, to do something about it. He slid a folder across the table to me. He said, "Diane, the estate house where you'll be living, the big main house, I bought that house in 1971 with money my own father gave me. It is in my name only. Eleanor has never been on the deed, not once in 52 years. I opened the folder. Inside was a quitclaim deed, notarized, dated 3 weeks earlier. Old Mr. Whitfield had transferred the entire estate, the main house, the carriage house, the gardens, and 4.2 acres of land, into a trust. The sole beneficiary of that trust, on his death, was me. Not Robert. Me. He looked me in the eye and he said, "My son is too proud to take it, so I am giving it to you. You hold it. You decide when and if the time is right to use it. I am sorry for what my wife is going to do to you. I am sorry I am not strong enough to stop her while I'm alive, but I will not let her die in that house thinking she won." He died 5 years later, in 2019. The will that was read at the lawyer's office said all of his assets, bank accounts, stocks, a vacation property in Florida, went to Eleanor and his 3 children. It said nothing about the main house, because the main house was not his to give. It was already mine. I had been the legal owner of the Whitfield family estate for 5 years, while I was sleeping in the garage. Robert died on a Tuesday in February. Heart attack. He was 53. I was the one who found him in our small garage bedroom. He'd gotten up to make coffee and he hadn't come back, and when I went out to the kitchenette, he was on the floor. He was already gone. I sat with him for a long time before I called anyone. I told him while I was sitting there, "Robert, I want you to know I never told you about the house because I was afraid you'd refuse it, and I wanted you to have a mother, even a bad one, even at the cost of our dignity. I'm sorry, sweetheart. It's about to stop being a cost." Then I called 911. The funeral was at the family church in Brookline. Eleanor had organized it without consulting me. She'd put me in the third row behind his sister and her husband. She'd given the eulogy herself. She'd told the story of Robert's life as if I had never been a part of it. She mentioned my name twice. Both times she called me his companion. After the service, the family gathered at the main house, the estate house, the one I owned and they didn't know I owned, for a private reception. I was, of course, told to wait in the garage until things settled down. I waited. I made myself a cup of tea. I changed out of my black dress into a simple gray sweater and jeans. I sat at our small kitchenette table for 40 minutes. Then I picked up the folder I'd been keeping in a fireproof box under our bed for 11 years, and I walked across the courtyard to the front door of my own house. I did not knock. I used a key, the original key from 1971 that old Mr. Whitfield had given me along with the deed. I had kept it on my keychain for 11 years and never used it once. I walked into the foyer. There were maybe 40 people in the main rooms. Whitfield cousins, family friends, the lawyer, the priest, the smell of lilies and coffee and old wood. Eleanor saw me first. She came out of the parlor with a wine glass in her hand and an expression I had seen 1,000 times. She said, "Diane, I asked you to wait in the garage." I said, "Eleanor, please gather your children. I have something to read to all of you." She laughed. She actually laughed in front of 40 people. She said, "My dear, I think the grief has gone to your head. Why don't you go lie down?" I waited. I waited until everyone in the room was looking at us, until Margaret stepped out of the dining room with a confused expression, until James stepped out of the library, until the lawyer, old family lawyer, Mr. Pemberton, who had read old Charles Whitfield's will 5 years earlier, looked up from his coffee. And then I opened the folder. I read aloud. Quitclaim deed, dated October 14th, 2014. Grantor, Charles Edward Whitfield. Grantee, Diane Whitfield Trust, a revocable living trust established under the laws of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. Eleanor went still. I kept reading. The conveyance is effective immediately upon notarization. The grantor retains a life estate in the property until his death, after which all rights, title, and interest in the property pass solely and exclusively to the grantee. I closed the folder. I looked at Eleanor. I said, "Charles died in 2019. The life estate ended 5 years ago. I have been the legal owner of this house since the morning of October 17th, 2019. I looked at Margaret. I looked at James. I looked at the cousins. I looked at the lawyer, Mr. Pemberton, who had gone very pale because he was the one who had failed to mention the side deed in his reading of the will 5 years earlier. I said, "I would like all of you to leave my house now." Eleanor said, "This is fraudulent. This isn't real. This can't be real." I handed the folder to Mr. Pemberton. I said, "Mr. Pemberton, would you do me the favor of confirming the document for the family?" Mr. Pemberton looked at the folder. He looked at the deed. He looked at the notarization. He looked at Eleanor. He nodded. He said, "Eleanor, the deed is valid. I was unaware Charles had executed it." Eleanor said, "You were the family lawyer. How could you not know?" Mr. Pemberton said, "He used a different attorney, a personal one. He told no one." Eleanor turned to me. For the first time in 11 years, she could not find a name to call me, not the woman, not the help, not his companion. I waited. I let the silence sit. Then I said, "You have until the end of the day to remove your personal belongings from any room in this house. Margaret, you have until Friday to clear your old bedroom. James, the same. Anything left after that becomes mine to dispose of as I see fit." I turned to the gathered family. I said, "Thank you all for coming today. The reception is over. You may leave through the front door." They left, all of them. Eleanor went last. She stood at the front door for a long time looking back at me. She said, "You knew. You knew the entire time. You let me treat me like that for 11 years knowing this was coming?" I said, Eleanor, I let you treat me like that for 11 years because I loved your son. He didn't deserve to lose his mother, even a mother like you. Now he's gone, and I don't have to protect you anymore." She said, "Where am I supposed to go?" I said, "You have a daughter in Newton. You have a son in Wellesley. You have a sister in Cape Cod. You have more options than you ever gave me. Goodbye, Eleanor." I closed the door. I locked it. I walked through the foyer, through the parlor, up the grand staircase, down the long hallway, into the master bedroom, the one Eleanor had slept in for 53 years, with its bay window and its four-poter bed and its bookshelf I was never allowed to touch. I sat down on the edge of the bed. I did not cry. I had cried for 11 years. I had cried in a garage with the freezer humming next to me. I had cried into Robert's shoulder at our small kitchenette table. I was finished crying. I picked up my phone. I called a moving company. I told them I needed everything from the garage moved into the master bedroom by tomorrow afternoon. The cot, the space heater, the small bookshelf with our books on it. I wanted those things in this house. I wanted them here as a reminder, every day, of who slept in a garage for 11 years and who lives in this bedroom now. Because I am not leaving this house. I am not selling it. I am not giving it back. I am going to live here, by myself, for as long as I have left. And every morning I am going to wake up in Eleanor Whitfield's master bedroom, and I am going to make my coffee in Eleanor Whitfield's kitchen, and I am going to walk through Eleanor Whitfield's gardens, and I am going to think of my husband, who never knew his father had loved him enough to do this, who died believing his mother had finally chosen him. He died loved. That's what I gave him. That's what cost me 11 years of my life, and I would do it again. If you have ever been the one in the garage, the one who was treated like staff in your own family, the one who was told you were not enough, the one who carried it silently because you loved someone too much to make them choose, leave one word in the comments below. The word is garage. Just so I know you're out there. Just so you know you're not alone. Subscribe so you don't miss the next story. We share a new one every week about quiet women who knew exactly what they were doing the entire time everyone underestimated them. Until then, keep your folder safe. You'll know when it's time to open it.